December 5th through 13th, we'll be in the streets of Paris covering the activist response to COP21, the UN Climate Summit. Lines will be drawn, literally. We are the people over profit for planet. Exclusive interviews, insight, and daily coverage of events on the ground. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out in Paris. Welcome to the next iteration of the COP21 updates. For the fans of the furry thing, I'm so sorry I didn't quite make it into the cut of this update, but this is just a quick intro to the interview that you're about to see with an amazing woman named Tara DePorte, who is the founder of an organization called the Human Impacts Institute that, among other things, brings artists and scientists together. Sort of a climate change activism orgy. I don't think she would use those words, but I just did. And so something that I kind of wanted to intro and have you guys thinking about while you're watching this interview, and even while you're looking at footage from COP21 and from the activist events of COP21, is this question of, in order to create the world that we want to live in order to create this climate justice that we're looking for instead of climate change, do you work within the system, or do you have to work outside of the system? Is capitalism sort of a system that you have to work outside of in order to create climate justice and real socio-political change? Tara has some insight into that, but I will let her take that, but something for you guys to sort of muse on while you watch this interview, and indeed while you see all of the footage that we have picked up from COP21. So without further ado, here is Tara DePorte from the Human Impacts Institute. Thank you so much, Tara, for joining us at Place to Be in Paris. So on the site, it says transforming challenges into social action. Explain how that works.
So one of our thoughts is that we really need to make environmental issues more personal, because we all care about ourselves and our own lives, and hopefully we care about more than that, but that's an inherent part of humanness. And so really trying to find ways to really take environmental challenges, pollution, climate change, injustices that are associated with them, and help people to see both how those connect to their own lives in a personal way, but then also help them get towards action. So taking social action, getting on the ground, actually doing something. So moving beyond this idea of knowledge is power, which I agree with, but if we don't transition that power into action, then it just stays there. And right now, particularly when looking at climate change, we need action.
So, and another thing on the site, it says, which I assume is part of this bringing people into action, is that you bring artists to scientists and scientists to artists. Explain why you feel that combination is important in doing and promoting this sort of action that you talked about.
Sure. So we have three program areas. I'll step back just a little bit and then directly answer your question. One is really on inspiration. So we work a lot with artists and people that are experts in creativity, or experts in creating those moments of inspiration where we, get the chills, where we get tears in our eyes. And so we work with them to build new ways to communicate, new ways to engage people. But then not all of those creatives that are experts in inspiration are experts in the tangible actions, in how to actually address emissions, how to reduce your food waste, those types of things, that we all need those actions to do as well. So that's when working with the scientists, working with the policymakers, working with the educators, the activists, the list goes on forever, the people that are experts in the diversity of solutions, we bring them in, and the idea is to really try to also get them to not only pair their work together, but get them to start working together and seeing what they can create together. We really try not to be heavy-handed in terms of coming in and telling people what to do unless they ask for that. But to also create, that's the third part. So we have inspiration, we have the action, which is just getting people to go out and do something. So that might be in New York City taking care of trees. It might be going and learning about oyster rehabilitation in the waters and how they clean the water. And then it's about sharing. So how do we bring these people together so that they can create something new and beautiful together kind of from the get-go and support each other? Does that kind of...
Absolutely. And so, I guess a big question is, where do these people come from? Where do you find them? I mean, and in that same vein, how do people who might be an artist or a scientist, like, how do they find you?
Yeah. Well, we're based in New York City, so particularly a lot of the action type things are very local in New York. Although because I've been here in France all year on a fellowship, been working a lot actually in Marseille, which is where I've been based this year, and also working in Germany some this year. So in New York City, it's I personally have been working there and doing environmental work for 15 years, so it starts becoming a community of knowing a lot of people. And in terms of finding these people, it's amazing. The right people always seem to come to us, and whether it's through internships or volunteers, or we do a lot of public programming because we don't want to keep talking to the same community over and over, and also create opportunities for communities that don't have as much infrastructure, don't have as much access to environmental education in their schools because of justice issues, to give more opportunities in the public, free public workshops for just anyone who happens to be walking by to join in. So that's some of them. The others, it's sometimes also very conscious curation. Like, we had a conversation, I kind of try to start every year with a conversation about what do we want to do? What are some of our goals for this year? What can we do better? What can we let go of? What aren't we doing that great? And who are some of our heroes that we want to work with? And last year, one of my heroes was StoryCorps. I don't know if you know that group. They are just a beautiful group working on providing a platform for people to share their stories of their lives in the U.S. particularly, and I think they do a beautiful job. And so we partnered with them to start telling the stories of amazing women in New York addressing climate change. And we had beautiful conversations between our climate sheroes and had really good audio, which makes a big difference, and then created exhibits and stuff out of that. So I think part of it is letting people come to you and creating platforms for that, and part of it is just like going after and just saying, hey, you're doing amazing work, how can we help you, how can we work together?
And so also it seems that a lot of this is focused on the grassroots level, on the local level. I wonder what your thoughts are on obviously now you're in Paris, which is not local to New York. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the local versus the global, because obviously climate change is a global issue, but a lot of times it seems like we can't really affect change on such a wide scale. We have to focus on our own communities. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was talking here at Place to Be last night, and I'm a real believer in the all of the above. Pick E that you need. You need all of them. Climate change is so big, and it affects all of us, and it's personal to all of us. That I really believe that we need the solutions from every angle, from the people in the streets protesting to the corporations addressing it, and through the economic system that exists now. And so. And now I forgot your question. I was like getting on the tip break. Can you just?
Well, I guess you already answered it because it was the global versus.
Yeah, I wanted to pull out actually one of our biggest supporters last year has been the German government, working. In the U.S. They funded us to tour the entire U.S. and to go to 9 cities in the U.S. to create these creative climate salons, and trying to find new ways to bring diverse people together in one community working on climate change, but that are approaching it in really different ways, and to have help create a space for them to come together and to talk, and to exchange ideas and to explore the topic together, which unfortunately I think we get so entrenched in our specialties that we often aren't interacting. And then of course we throw live performance and stuff, that inspiration into it with local cultural performances. But it was really, the point I'm making with that is the German government really, from my perspective, has worked with us because they see that we are able to help them make that cultural connection. We're able to help them communicate this crazy policy stuff that's going on that most people honestly don't care about or don't see how it's relevant to their lives, and to make it more personal and to see both that policy does affect our lives, but also that we can affect that policy. And I'm a big, I don't think we're a grassroots organization. I think we support the grassroots, but I'm most excited about how do we make those links between the top and the bottom, and also maybe start transitioning and not seeing it as top and bottom, and more like we need to have those conversations going back and forth, because there's a lot to learn and a lot needed. There are different ways to approach the solutions.
So what would you, finally, what would you say, because a lot of the actions in Paris have been, of course, at Le Bourget, that are working within the confines of the system that as it exists, and a lot of them are saying we can't use this system because capitalism is based on a system of extraction and it's never going to work. And how do you feel about, is there a way to bridge that gap that you're talking about? And if so, like what would that look like? And what are your feelings on whether we can work within this system? Because it sounds like you work within the system and you've had success in that. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that dichotomy.
Yeah, I think for me, in some ways, I see myself as a pragmatist, and I'm very happy to have people disagree with my views, because I think we do. Like I said, I think we need the people that are completely on the outside pushing and saying this is not okay. We need the people saying this is a completely broken system and we need to just have a new system. I feel like my personal worth is in being able to get people to talk to each other, and I want to be able to sit down at the table with anyone, and to see like how do we get to the solution, and put a big S on that, how, and I think unfortunately with climate change, in terms of system change, of course, we see revolution all throughout history, and we see these trigger points, but oftentimes, changing minds and hearts can be a long-term process. And there's a real sense of immediacy that we need as well. And I believe that some of that immediacy can be addressed through the system that we have, that can be addressed for, okay, we have this, I think there's no doubt, the consumption and production cycle of waste and just like overconsumption that's part of our capitalist system, and continued growth it doesn't make sense. There's no continuous growth in nature. But there are tools within the capitalist system that exist, and so many people are wrapped up in it. How can we transform what's there now and make it more sustainable, make it more like that? It's, I'm loving to see the growth of the sharing economy and these like new, where we're not buying things, but we're exchanging services, and we're finding new ways to do that and to innovate. So I like fighting from within and influencing and changing from within, but in terms of addressing your question of bridging the gap, I don't think we always need to work with each other and agree either. Like, there's really beautiful stuff comes out of being pushed and being challenged and like not agreeing and not having everyone be like, yeah, we're all doing this together. So I think that disconnect, like I'd like to see some, more fostering of like, yeah, that's okay that we're like, you can take it that way, and we need that. We need that fight for like a new system, but we also need the fight for like, let's get the system working better.
So they're definitely not mutually exclusive things. It's not that the black bloc and the greens within the system can't work together. And perhaps, as you said, we need both of them working together. And then, do you think? So I'm guessing that this 2-degree. The IPCC is talking about the 2-degree change, the rise in temperatures. So we can all be walking towards, climate justice and averting climate change, and make it under there without having to make it under that 2 degrees without having to all hold hands and march there together.
Yeah, and I think that's some, in some ways, I think as environmentalists, I've been focusing a lot on communication and how do we trigger action? What are those catalysts? What are the things that, and thinking about that a lot, particularly this year. And I think as environmentalists, to blanket statement of our movement, we haven't been great on the inspiration part, and we haven't been super inclusive in a lot of our language and in a lot of our approaches, and we haven't listened to a lot of communities, which has been what's so beautiful about some of the evolutions in the climate movement in the past couple of years, where you see unions, you see people on the front lines, you see people of color, we're seeing a lot more diversity and a lot more diversity in the actions that can be taken. And I I think this issue is so big. We need to create that space where everyone can feel like they are a part of it, whether they're a Tea Party person from from the U.S. or whether they're someone from a rural village somewhere. I think emphasizing those actions and definitely, as to get a little bit more specific, we need to reduce our emissions, no matter what. We need to reduce our consumption. We need to transform that. The 2 degrees target, or 1.5 degrees, as many people are calling for, I think that's been good for policymakers to have something tangible to grasp onto, because it's really hard. If I were to ask you, okay, so what do you want in terms of climate action for the world? Like, that's a hard question. There are a lot of answers to that. So I feel like those numbers have been helpful as a target for people to rally behind, and also for politicians to kind of have something tangible to work with.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of the busy COP21 schedule. And I really look forward to seeing your work, and whether that be Germany, Marseille, or indeed New York.
Yeah, thank you.